seeing today's recording for sure. Knock on wood, folks, that we don't get another power outage during class. Okay, everybody knock on wood. Muy bien. Y buenos días, buenos días. Vamos a practicar hablando del pasado muchísimo. Y es difícil. You know, this is a hard thing. Actually, I really love teaching past tense. I really do love teaching it because it's something that you have to kind of segment and get comfortable with it in baby steps, baby steps. That's the only way to do it. And past tense is something in Spanish that it typically takes really good students about a year to learn it, about another year to feel like I'm kind of comfortable with this. You know, that is a pretty typical thing. If you in the past have studied something like French, it is probably a slightly less of a hurdle because they have a similar structure of having different kinds of past tenses. But we're going to start today. Okay. Vamos a empezar con un ejercicio muy breve con acabar de. We're going to start with the easy stuff, the baby steps, and then move up in difficulty. And so anything you had as practice sentences, get ready. We'll take a look. And I asked you to come prepared to talk today really with only 2 sentences using acabar de as a start. And we're just going to do a quick review of how we use acabar de so that everybody's on the same page. And, you know, sometimes even with caffeine, our brains need a little more of a kickstart. Acabar de, it actually uses the present tense of acabar, but it uses the present tense to talk about something very, very recent. And how recent? Well, there's no like straight rule, but pretty recent. You know, something that happened this morning, you know, something that happened in the last few hours. You can use acabar de to talk in the afternoon about what happened in the morning, to talk in the evening about what happened in the afternoon. You know, it's for the recent past. And all we do is we conjugate acabar, que es regular, es un verbo regular. All we do is conjugate acabar. We insert that little word de, muy importante, really important. And then we attach an infinitive. And the infinitive will not be conjugated. It will just indicate the action that, you know, whatever it is, whatever activity it is that somebody has just done. So acabar de will use acabo para yo, ¿sí? Acabo. Acabas para tú, ¿sí? Acaba para una persona. Acaban con N. Acaban para 2 personas, 3 personas, muchas personas, para ustedes, for you guys, right? Y acabamos para nosotros, nosotros, okay? We need that little word de. It's not translatable. It just needs to be there with acabar. And then we have an infinitive. So, okay. Entonces, tenemos estos ejemplos. Por ejemplo, acabamos de llamar a José. We just called Joe. Acabas de hacer tu tarea. Did you just do your homework? O, por ejemplo, acabo de escuchar las noticias. Wow, I just listened to the news. Okay. I would like you to use an example. Tell us something that I did recently. I have just finished doing, and it means to have just done something, because acabar by itself, without the de and without the infinitive, means to finish. Okay. So acabar en presente con de, hablar de una acción para yo una acción para otra persona. Un ejemplo, mi ejemplo, por favor, por ejemplo, acabo de cortar las ramas de mi árbol enfrente de la casa. Acabo de cortar las ramas del árbol que está enfrente de mi casa. ¿Entienden? I have just finished, y es la verdad, la pura verdad. Wow, that is really true. A las 6 de la mañana. I have just cut the tree limbs, the tree branches in the house, in the tree
Front yard.
Okay. Sí, in the front yard. Sí, front yard. Enfrente de mi casa, front yard. It implies front yard in front of my house. Exacto. Y hablando de otras personas, I want you to use one sentence using acabar de, not to talk about yo, but to talk about somebody else. Por ejemplo, mis dos hijos acaban de limpiar los baños y la cocina. Ellos sí, porque llegaron ayer el plomero, because the plumber came yesterday. Mis hijos acaban de limpiar los baños y la cocina, porque el plomero estaba trabajando en la cocina, reparando cosas, sí, y en 2 baños en nuestra casa. My kids have just finished cleaning up where the plumber was working. Okay? ¿Entienden?
Sí.
Bien, bueno. Sus ejemplos. If you had time to prep something, I'd like to hear what examples you had with acabar de. ¿Alguien?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Mark, empieza. Mark y entonces Mariana, ¿no?
Okay. Sí.
Acabo de comer mi desayuno favorito con bagels y lax.
Bagels y lax. Yo también acabo de comer un bagel, pero sin lax. No tengo lax. Okay. Pero es muy rico.
Yeah.
Está muy rico. Bueno. Ok. Y hablando de otra persona, Mark.
Yes. Mi esposa acaba de ejercitar con video.
Ok. Exercise. Acaba.
Did I get that the exercise right?
Sí. Es más común decir acaba de hacer ejercicio. Es un poquito más común decir hacer ejercicio. Es una combinación de 2 palabras. En inglés tenemos to exercise. En español, con frecuencia se dice hacer ejercicio. Literally, you do exercise. Pero acaba de, sí, correcto, acaba de hacer ejercicio. Excelente. Bueno, Mariana.
Okay. Esta mañana acabo de caminar a la parque.
Fantástico.
Al parque. Otro.
Sí, y podemos decir caminar en el parque, walk in the park, o caminar al parque. Los dos son correctos. It depends on what you mean. Walking to is caminar a, but walking in the park is caminar en. Sí. Okay. Sí. Excelente.
Mi esposo acaba de ir a la tienda a comprar comida.
Bien. Okay. Gracias. Excelente. ¿Alguien más? Anybody else have an acabar example? Trish, dinos.
Acabo de alimentar un picaflor en la casa de mis clientes.
Okay. Okay. Bien. Y
Y mi esposo acaba de nadar en la piscina con sus amigos.
nadar en la piscina. Excelente. Bueno, Pat.
Acabo de trabajar en el patio y acabo de escoger las verduras por nuestra cena esta noche.
Okay.
Esta noche.
Esta noche. Bien, bien. Excelente. Okay. Diana.
Acabo de comer mi almuerzo porque en Illinois es mediodía.
El almuerzo porque es mediodía. It's noon.
Sí.
Sí, acabas de comer el almuerzo. Exacto. Bien. Hablando de otra persona, Diana.
Yep.
Uh,
Are you done, Diane?
I have mi hija acaba de comprar una nueva maleta en línea para su viaje.
Bien. Acaba de comprar una maleta nueva en línea, online, en línea. Exacto. She's just bought a new suitcase online. Okay. Excelente. Mary María, ¿tienes algo?
Okay. Acabo de caminar 5 millas esta mañana
Wow, bien.
and mi perro acaba de beber un tazón de agua.
Bien. Ok. Un tazón de agua. A bowl. Sí.
Oh.
Oh, sí. Especialmente. Bueno, ¿el perro acaba de caminar contigo? Did the dog
No.
just walk with you too? Oh, no.
You can't
Okay.
walk that. You can't walk that far. No.
Okay. Bien. Bueno, fantástico. Buenos ejemplos, really, really good examples. So that is kind of a fun and nice, it's a cheat, but not really a cheat because, you know, if something is very, very recent, you know, that is a way that people really often will say they've just done something. And one of the most common ways you will hear that is if somebody is invited to dinner and the people respond to you, acabamos de comer, we just ate. Gracias, pero no. Thanks, but no. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Response, gracias, pero acabamos de comer. Thanks, but we just ate. You know, this is one of those common responses if you invite somebody, but they really are full. Okay.
Carolyn, did you say, I just want to double check, did you say that we can use this acabar even if it's describing something that like now it's morning, but something you did last night?
You could, sure. Absolutely. If I were talking today about something we did last night, okay. Por ejemplo, sí, por ejemplo, mis hijos y yo acabamos de ver un programa de ciencia ficción. We just watched a sci-fi movie, okay? A sci-fi program last night. Sure, that's recent enough. It works. Bien. Okay. I want to show you one other thing about acabar before we finish. And this is kind of a preview, but it is another way you will hear people use acabar. It is a frequent, okay, so one frequent way you hear is when people say something like, gracias, pero no acabamos de comer. Thanks, but no thanks, we just ate. But you may hear people often using acabar in this way, not as acabar de, but rather acabar en preterito. And I'm going to show you how you'll frequently hear this used. Acabar en preterito, and we're not really focusing on preterito, but because this is so common, I wanted to give you kind of a footnote. You may, and you know that acabo is the yo form in presente, right? But if you hear somebody say, acabó, that's not the same as acabo. Okay, cuidado. And acabó, and more frequently even phrased this way as se acabó, se acabó. Acabo is not talking about yo at all. Acabo is a past. Okay, por ejemplo, I'll give you a contextual situation in which you might hear somebody say, se acabó. And because you know acabo, you might think, oh, they're saying I just did something, but whoa, strangely, the person left it hanging. They just said se acabó, and there's no de, and there's no nothing else. Okay, they don't mean I have just done something. Se acabó means it's done. It's finished. You might even say in English, it just wrapped up. It just finished. It just ended. Okay. Por ejemplo, you get to, you're going to a convention. Yeah. You're going to a convention, you know, you got the little thing with the list, el horario, the schedule. There are like all these different meetings people can go to. And, oh, wow, you were interested in this particular, somebody was going to give a speech. Somebody was going to have a meeting. Ooh, una reunión. You wanted to attend a meeting, right? And you see an usher or, you know, some of these people who are around to kind of help people find their way around at this convention or, you know, whatever this big event is. And you ask about, bueno, la reunión está aquí en este salón. Is the meeting in this room? And the person responds, because they're standing outside the door where you think they're going to have the meeting. They respond with, ya se acabó. It just ended. It just finished up. Ya se acabó means, wow, now it just ended itself. It's over with. It wrapped up. It's done. Ya se acabó. It just finished. So, se acabó or ya se acabó. Ya is saying already, it just finished up. Is not the same. It is a past tense. Acabar can be used in the past tense, but when it's used by itself without that de and infinitive structure, if it is used just by itself and if it is used in the past, it means something has just ended. Okay.
With that, is it always using the acabó form, or are there's no other conjugation used on that?
There are other conjugations. If you were talking about something plural, acabaron. If you're talking about, I just finished something, acabé. Acabé con, I finished with. Acabé con el discurso. I finished with the speech, or, you know, something of that nature. But you'll most frequently hear it thrown out as this kind of phrase, because usually it's often said when somebody's asking about some kind of event and the person wants to communicate to you, oh, you missed it. You just missed it. It just wrapped up. So they're telling you, hey, don't even bother going in the room. Oh, it's over. It's done. Okay. It's over. Ya se acabó. It's over. Yeah, it just ended. It means it's over. Yeah. Over is not even a verb, is it? It's over. But you know, ain't going to happen anymore, right? If that's in English, if you want to, this is the way of saying it's over. Ya se acabó, it's over. Okay, bien. So just so that you know, there's a different way of using acabar. You'll usually hear it used in that way when somebody is giving information about something. Of course, there are other conjugations, as you asked, Mark. It'll have past tense conjugations, but I don't want to focus on those too much today. A different day, we will take a look at that. Okay. A ver. So now, what I want to focus on more today is the imperfecto. We've got these two past tenses in Spanish. And in truth, in reality, if anybody talks about something very blasé, like what happened in their day, husband comes home from work and shares with his wife, here's what happened during my day. Kids come home from school and they say, oh, here's what we did. Now, oh, kids come back from a play date. They talk about, hey, here's what happened during our day. In any discussion of somebody's day, it is impossible, virtually impossible, to avoid using the two different past tenses. It's impossible because when we talk about what happened in our day, that's going to be a mixture of descriptions, maybe about the weather, maybe about people. It might talk about something that was going on. All those things are going to use imperfecto, okay? And then the other part of your story will consist of the events that happened during that day. And those events that move the action of the story forward, those are going to be done in what they call preterito. And preterito has, for some strange reason, depending on what you read, like 5 or 6 different grammar terms. Why? I don't know. But anyway, the simple past is what they often call preterito. It's impossible to avoid the two, but we want to start with you using the imperfecto for a very simple reason. And the reason is that the imperfecto is much easier to conjugate. And there are certain verbs that you can predict. You will hear more in imperfecto than you do in preterito. You will hear it a lot more in a general conversation using imperfecto for really simple, everyday kind of descriptions. So that's why we're going to focus on the imperfecto. Okay. Vamos a ver. Okay. Here is what imperfecto is going to look like. And again, I give you another little tiny homework on that. We'll come to that in a little bit. But what it's going to help you the most is to hear lots and lots of examples. So imperfecto, the imperfect, and by the way, it gets that name, imperfect, which sounds like there's something wrong with it. It is not perfect. In fact, it is not perfect. Yet it is in so many ways. Okay, why is it imperfecto, imperfect? Because it talks about past events where we don't know a definite end and a definite beginning. In other words, it's kind of fuzzy. We're not really emphasizing a beginning and end. We're not emphasizing something that happened and was over, happened and was over, happened and was over. We're talking about what was going on, okay? Or we're describing, and therefore fuzzy on the beginning and end. We're just focusing on what was going on at the time. Imperfecto, because it does not indicate a clear beginning or end. That is why it gets that name, imperfecto. But in fact, it is perfect because it is easy to conjugate. So all except for 3 verbs. 3 verbs are irregular in the whole language, and that is it. So you can easily predict which kind of verbs or what form a verb is going to have in imperfecto. You will not have stem changes in imperfecto ever. They don't exist in that tense. Okay. So verbs that you have like sentarse, to sit down, despertarse, to wake up. Those IE verbs, pensar, to think about, empezar, right? Comenzar, dormir, to sleep, encontrar, to find. Those E to IE changes, the O to UE changes, they do not exist in this tense. Okay, all AR verbs will get aba kind of endings. They'll all get aba kind of endings. Yo and él, ella, usted share the same conjugation. Yes, so you may hear pronouns used a little more commonly if it is not clear from the context. You may hear it a little bit more. People still omit pronouns, but because yo and él, ella, usted share the same conjugation, people may need to clarify. But just like present tense, tú gets an S ending, abas, an S at the end of the aba, abas, abas. Nosotros gets a mos ending on it, but we have an aba in front of it, abamos, abamos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes gets that N ending. So we take the aba and we put an N ending on it, aban, okay? All AR verbs are going to do that. All AR verbs are going to do that, okay? So things that you're very used to being irregular, like estar, it'll use aba. Estar will have estaba, estabas, estaba, estábamos, estaban, okay? Bien. So, okay. Aba endings. ER and IR verbs will share the same kind of conjugations. And again, yo ending, the yo conjugation for ER, IR, it will be the same conjugation as él, ella, usted. These, unlike the aba, ER and IR verbs all get ia endings, and all of these have an accent mark. Every single one of them, all the ia forms get a punch on that E sound, okay? So ia, again, we just add an S onto the ia to make it a tu form, ias. Again, él, ella, usted shares the same thing with yo for the ending there. We on the ia, we tag on amos to get a nosotros form, íamos, okay? Ia is for vosotros, but we're not practicing with that one because that's Spain only. And we take the ia ending, but tag an N on to make it a plural third person form, ian, okay? Ian. And, okay. So, okay, por ejemplo, estoy buscando una carta. Oh, okay, let's just go with something like, wow. Momentito. A ver. Okay. Something like salir, right? We take this off. Salía, yeah, salgo, we have that odd and presente odd, salgo, that go thing. Those kind of things don't happen with imperfecto. Salía, salías, salía, salíamos, salían. Okay, somebody was leaving. Okay, a ver, to say something was growing, crecer, somebody was growing, crecía, crecías, crecía, crecíamos, crecían. Bien, vale. To say that, busco otro ejemplo. A ver. Okay. You're used to having a go for yo, right? Pongo, pongo. Pero en imperfecto, ponía, ponías, ponía, poníamos, ponían. I mean, these are just very predictable. They're very easy to use because they're regular. Oh, to say somebody knew something, right? Yo sé, I know, in presente, present, but I knew. Sabía, sabía, sabías, sabía, sabíamos, sabían. And this imperfecto is used most frequently with saber, to say somebody knew something. In fact, I cannot use this verb in preterito without changing the meaning of the verb somewhat. We'll talk about that a different day. Anytime, 100%, if you want to say, oh, I knew that, it's sabía. It's sabía. Okay, sabía. So, imperfecto is very easy for us to use, very easy to predict. Here are the only 3 irregulars, but we are going to hear these. And these irregulars are going to be not endings like the aba and the ia, but whole words, entire words. Okay, so here are the 3 verbs, and they are the only 3 verbs in the whole language that are irregular for that imperfecto tense. And they are ser, ir, and ver. And ver, it's hard to kind of call that an irregular. The only reason ver falls into this category is that we do not take off the ER. We take off just the R. So in other words, we use the E in ver, but look at the endings. The endings are like what you saw and learned with the ERIR verbs. So as ver, to see, is an ER verb, it does use ER verb endings, but it keeps the E, the letter E, from ver, la letra E en español, E. So veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veían. I want you to note though, veía translates as or is used when you mean I was looking at, or I used to see something. Okay, a repeated action or something that was happening. One of the definitions of using imperfecto is that if in English you would phrase something as I was doing this, was doing, or if what you would use in English is I used to, then we use this imperfecto. And for this verb ver, it has to mean a repeated action or something that you were doing. Okay. Okay, so ver is the only one there that really kind of almost shouldn't be irregular, but it is because it keeps this letter perdón, keeps that letra right there. Okay, ser and ir, they get not endings but a whole word. So to say I was will be era, to say you were will be eras, to say he was or she was, it'll be era, or to say it was, era, to say we were, éramos, to say they were, eran. Okay, this is for descriptions when I'm using characteristics. If I want to say he was tall, era alto, era muy alto, he was very tall. There is no beginning or end to he was tall, because he was tall is not an event. It has to be imperfecto. Yeah. Wow. The park was beautiful. El parque era hermoso. Era muy bonito. All right. A park looking a certain way, that's a description of how it looked in the past. A description of how something looked isn't an event. It's not something that happens and then it moves the action forward. It's just a description. So ser used for descriptions, okay, of people or things in the past is going to use these heavily, heavily, heavily. These forms of era, éramos, eras, erais in Spain, era and eran are heavily, heavily used by people in daily conversation. Ir is our last of the irregulars. And this you can only say if you mean I was going to do something, or I used to go to a certain place and it's a repeated event. Okay. If I say I went to the store, I cannot use these forms you see on the screen. I went to the store is an event. Happened pretty clear beginning and end. I went to the store. I went to the neighbor's house. That's an event. But I used to go to the zoo with my grandparents, used to go. If what you mean is used to do it, it'll be this verb cluster of iba. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Ir is actually, in my opinion, probably used a little more in that other past tense of preterito, but we'll look at that a different day. Iba is the used to go or was going. Iba for yo. Iba, yo iba, tú ibas, él ella, usted iba, nosotros íbamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes iban. All right. So again, you do get those little endings. You get the S at the end of the tú. You get the S at the end of the tú form, right? You get the mos at the end for the nosotros. You get the N sound at the end for the third person plural. So that all stays consistent, but those being givens that they are consistencies with the conjugation, these are the only three irregular verbs in imperfecto. Okay, bien? And they're not endings. So don't take ser, take off the ER and start with the letter S. It can't do that. All right. It can't do that. Okay. Bien. And we're going to talk about our big, 4 or 5 verbs in about a minute. Okay. Imperfectos used to talk about things that were a habit or were repeated many times, and we don't know how often, but just a lot. It's used for descriptions in the past. Oddly, it's used for telling time in the past, but don't worry about that too much. You won't need to use that a whole lot. And the biggie, you know, is that descriptions component, I'm going to play a video for you that kind of explains that in a minute. Okay. Often we need kind of that 50-50 rule of I need to know if I use this verb in the preterite or if I use it in the imperfecto, and your 50-50 rule, as it were, is if the words you would use in English would be, I was walking along, I was driving when an accident happened, I was driving, oh, they were talking on the phone yesterday. Or if the words you would use in English would be, we used to go to the zoo with our parents. I used to play with my next door neighbor. Used to. That is when we kick in with this imperfecto. Okay. Let's take a quick look at, or not so quick look, maybe, some verbs that you wind up using a lot in the past. I'm going to show you what they look like in both imperfecto and preterito. But these are verbs that you learned the very first time you learned Spanish. Like the early lessons, oh, they focus on, well, haber is that verb hay. You know it as hay. All right. Hay, there is or there are, right? Hay árboles enfrente de mi casa. There are trees in front of my house. There are right now, right? So when you see the verb haber, it means that verb for you right now, hay. You learned this verb ser, you learned estar, you learned tener, you learned ir. These are very, very common verbs and they're used a lot. I'm going to show you how they look in both tenses. Okay, we're going to start with haber. Hay means there is, and we're going to learn how to say there was, or you know what? We also need to include in that, besides there was, there were. Yeah. Okay. This is that nice verb because you only need one conjugation. En presente hay. Hay árboles enfrente de mi casa. Right? But if I want to flip that into past tense, and when I talk, and I want to say there was something, or there were a certain number of people someplace, I will use había. And just like I is always used as I, había is used as había. This comes from the verb haber, okay? And this is what we call the imperfecto. You can see that this is regular, es regular. I, H-A-Y, doesn't look very much like haber, but había does look a lot like haber. Había just means there was or there were. And you'll see a couple of examples here. Había is used in the past. You will hear haber used way more in imperfecto than it is in the other past tense. Haber is used to describe. You say, wow, there was a lot of noise last night. There were tons of people in the office. Those are all descriptions. They paint a picture of what you saw in a particular place. Había, to talk in the past, 90% of the time, that's what you're going to hear people using. So an example would be a sentence like this. Había muchas nubes. There were a lot of clouds. Because we only use this in one form. There's not a plural used for this kind of there was, there were situation. Había muchas nubes. There were a lot of clouds. Había mucho sol. It was really sunny. Había mucho sol. All right. Here is what haber looks like in preterito, but it's not as frequent in conversation. In preterito, haber takes the form hubo. And again, it's only that form, hubo. There is no plural for it, but it only talks about events. So because we really use this more for description, you don't hear this as much, but you'll hear it if somebody wants to talk about an accident. Hubo un accidente, because an accident is an event. An event has a beginning and an end. Oh, then they'll say, okay, now it's logical to say, hubo un accidente. There was an accident. Oh, por ejemplo, hubo un incendio. There was a fire. A fire is an event. It happened. Yeah. So that makes sense to put in this idea of an action has a beginning and an end that is clear cut. Hubo. But most of the time, really as high as saying like maybe 80, maybe 90% of the time, you're going to hear haber used as había. Okay, there was or there were. So, había pájaros en el árbol. There were birds in the tree. Había mucha luz esta mañana. There was a lot of light this morning. Okay. A ver, you'll hear it most of the time as había. Here's what happens with ser. Here's a presente of ser. Okay. Soy, somos, eres, sois, es, son. Here's what you saw as it's an irregular. Era, éramos, eras, erais, eran, or era, eran, yeah, right? Was or used to be for giving descriptions. And here's an example of the era forms, the imperfect forms used in an example. Here's a description about my grandpa. Mi abuelo era muy amable. My grandpa was very kind. I'm describing what his personality was like. What his personality was like illustrates why this is imperfecto. It's a description. He was nice. That's not an event. It didn't just happen and it's over. It's what he used to be like. A nice guy, kind. My grandpa was very kind. Era muy amable. Okay. Just so you know, here are the very weird and odd forms that said will take for that second past tense that we call the preterite. And anything that begins like with an F sure doesn't look like it should be something with ser, does it? No. Okay. So don't try to memorize these yet, but do know if you hear this. Yeah. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuiste, fueron, can mean, but doesn't always. Can mean was or were. Can mean. Okay. We're going to focus on these today, though, these imperfecto uses, any kind of description. Okay. Bien. Let's look at another verb that is used a lot in descriptions. You learned the presente of estar in the first few weeks of Spanish. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. Pero en el pasado, if I'm saying somebody was happy, okay, somebody was sad, it was cloudy. Now I'm going to need estar in imperfecto for a description to say was or were. And estar stops being irregular in imperfecto. Estaba, estábamos, estabas, para tú, ¿sí? Estaba, él, ella, usted, estaban, they were. These are used for descriptions or locations. Okay. If I talk about where somebody was, I was at the store. Estaba en el mercado. Estaba en el supermercado. All right. Estábamos, el ejemplo aquí. Yeah. Descriptions or locations. Estábamos en la oficina. We were in the office. We were in the office. It's just where we were taking up space. That isn't really an event. It really isn't. So we switch into this imperfecto. You will hear estar used a lot in imperfecto. Estar is very regular in imperfecto. Just so you have an eyeball clue, estar is not at all regular in the other past tense. And I would say it's probably not as frequently used in preterito as it is in imperfecto. So you will hear estar a little bit more, probably percentage-wise, used in this imperfecto. You'll probably hear it more this way and less this way, this estuve thing, which is very irregular. Lots of spelling weird things. You'll hear estar used more in imperfecto. Okay. Tener. You will hear more used in imperfecto. Percentage-wise, conversationally. Tener muy irregular, very irregular in presente. Tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tenéis, tienen. It's one of those IE stem changes, and then the yo doesn't use a stem change, it has a go. Wow, that's weird. But tener muy regular en imperfecto, very, very regular in imperfecto. Tenía, I had. Teníamos, we had. Tenías, you had. Tenía, he had or she had. Tenían, they had. You will hear tener used a ton in imperfecto because it describes what somebody had. The fact that I had something in my possession is not an event. It didn't happen. I just had it. It just kind of existed there, right? I had something. Even if I say I had this in my pocket, the emphasis is that it was just there, and it's just being there in my pocket isn't an event. It's just describing where something was. Okay, so tener you're going to hear a lot in imperfecto. So, por ejemplo, if I want to say my brother and I had a little dog when we were kids, I've got two descriptions. We had a dog because we used to have that dog. How long? I don't know, a bunch of years. We had him. And we had him when we were kids, which is a description of we were not old people, we were little. Okay, so mi hermana y yo teníamos un perrito. We had a doggy. Cuando éramos niños, when we were kids. Okay. Those are all really descriptions. Had a dog when we were kids doesn't talk about a thing that happened at a specific moment. It's a description of what was going on at a certain age. Anytime we talk about age in the past, we wind up using imperfecto. Okay. Tener, when it flips into the other past tense, what we call preterito, becomes an event, and it no longer means had. It means got, received, obtained something. So tener will wind up being very irregular, as you can see. It gets a U and a V. Where the heck does that come from? I don't know. But those are the other past tense. The event-oriented past tense will look like these. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo. You will not hear that anywhere near as often as you hear these. Tenía, tenías, tenía. They're just way more common. Okay? Bien? We're going to take a look at one more verb. And then we'll do some practice. Ir, muy irregular, en presente. Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van, vi, all over the place. Okay, right. But this is one of the three irregulars for imperfecto. And I can only use it as iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, iban, if I mean somebody was going or was going to do something, or they used to go, meaning they did it a lot, frequently. I don't know how many times, a bunch. So, yo iba a salir a las 11. I was going to leave at 11. If what I mean in English is I was going to do something, I can use iba. This verb ir, you're probably more likely to hear it in the preterito. Because conversationally speaking, I think we tend to say where somebody went more often, and it usually is an event. Went to go. Went is more commonly used in conversation as an event. And because it's an event, it'll go into what we call preterito. So this is not the one we're practicing as heavily today, but so you know, it's very common to hear this verb in preterito. So look at how odd ir looks in preterito. It gets an F. Fui, I went. Fuimos, we went. Fuiste, you went. Fuiste is for vosotros, only in Spain. Fue, he went. And fueron, they went. That's it. So ir is much, you're probably more likely to hear it in conversation as preterito, this oddball thing, the fui verb, but tener, more common as imperfecto, tenía. Estar, more common as imperfecto, estaba. Ser, more common as imperfecto, era. All of those, okay? Bien? Good so far? See? Okay. I am going to give you a little video to watch about that. It's entirely in Spanish, so put on subtitles. But she's going to talk about, she's going to reinforce, I would say in the last half of the video, it's about an 8-minute video maybe. She's going to reinforce that, oh, you're likely to hear tener as these imperfecto forms. So even though the explanation video is all in Spanish, listen to it and kind of go with the examples she gives of how we use imperfecto. And that some of these verbs are much like tener, like ser, like estar, are much more common in imperfecto to talk about the past. Okay, bien. And I believe I asked you to check out or to, oh yeah, talk about what you used to do, right? Past tense. Uy, ¿dónde está? Trying to find my description. Oh yeah, something you used to do. An example. Un ejemplo. I'm going to give an example for me. I want to see if you've got some, if you can use some kind of verb. And I think I only asked you to do one verb, right? Yeah, pick one verb and tell me what you used to do 10 years ago. Okay. When I was teaching high school, I used to repeat words over and over and over again. Yeah. Sometimes to teach them Spanish, sometimes to say, quit doing that, quit doing that, quit doing that. You know how that goes because it's teenagers. Okay. So repetir is going to be very, very regular. And if I want to say I repeated vocabulary words all the time, it would be yo repetía mucho vocabulario. Yo repetía muchas palabras en español. Repetía muchas palabras a mis estudiantes. Bien. There is one example. Oh, por ejemplo, or for example. My students used to compete against Payson's High School. Big rival for Fountain Hills. Okay. Los estudiantes, because I'm not talking about yo. Los estudiantes competían mucho con el colegio de Payson. Bien. Un ejemplo con an example with aba. The bell for the end of the day 10 years ago. The bell, to signal the end of the day, the bell would ring at 2:30. La campana, the bell. La campana sonaba. Sonaba a las 2:30. La campana sonaba a las 2:30. The bell used to ring at 2:30. That was the routine. Sonaba. Bien? Okay. Does anybody have one example is all you need, but if you got more than that, that's great. Sí, es excelente. Anybody have an example using the aba forms or the ia forms? Diana.
Hace 10 años jugaba a tenis con mis amigas.
Jugaba al tenis. I used to play tennis. Now notice, if she wanted to say, I played tennis yesterday, then I could not have used jugaba, because then it would be yesterday, an event. But because she did it a bunch of times, it was a routine, right? A habit, something, I don't know how many times, I just used to, right? Jugaba al tenis. Excelente. Okay. Alguien, Trish, dinos.
Hace 10 años me disfrutaba montar mi bicicleta varias veces a la semana afuera.
Okay, excelente. Disfrutaba, I enjoyed. See? Now, an easier verb for you to use, even than that one, Trish, would be I liked.
Oh.
I liked it like I used to like doing this, right? Me gustaba. We take gustaba. Yeah. Now your example was not incorrect. Yeah.
Right.
But
right.
para que sepas, so you know, it's very common if somebody means, oh, I used to like doing that, they'll say, me gustaba mucho. Wow, I used to like that. Me gustaba mucho. Me gustaba montar en bicicleta mucho. Bien? See? So you hear an alternative, right? Me gustaba. Okay? Perfecto, perfecto. Me gustaba esquiar. I loved skiing. Right? I liked to ski. I like to ski. Me gustaba esquiar. I used to do it a lot. So it has to be me gustaba because I did it a lot and I liked it. Okay, Mark, ¿tienes algo?
I'm not doing the 10 years, but I
Okay.
decided to try something else.
Está bien, that's good.
Antes de COVID, mi esposa y yo viajábamos con frecuencia.
Frecuencia. That's a long word. Con frecuencia. Con frecuencia. You know what? Let's look at some different ways to say a lot. Con frecuencia is great. Frequently. Yeah. Oh, mucho. A lot. Viajábamos mucho. Viajábamos mucho. We used to travel a lot. Oh, por ejemplo, viajábamos muchas veces, many times. I don't know how many, just a lot. Yeah. So we're going to take a look a little bit in a while after your examples at some of these time marker words that might help you a little bit too with that. Okay. Otros ejemplos, other examples. Pat, dinos.
Hace 10 años trabajado con mucha gente que no me gustaba. Así
Sí.
que me jubiló.
Me
Retired.
Me jubilé.
Jubilé.
Me jubilé. There's your true event. When you retire, you do that and then it's done, right? Yeah. Yeah. Me jubilé. I retired. Okay. And that was an event. It happened. And then it's over. Me jubilé. Okay. Bien. Excelente. Marianne. Oh.
Okay, my examples of something I had, so not what I did, whatever. Tenemos una teníamos una casa muy grande hace 10 años. Tenía 5 habitaciones con 5 personas.
Okay.
Ahora tenemos 2 casas pequeñas con solo 2 personas.
Okay. Bien. Bien. We had a house. We had a house isn't an event. It didn't happen. We just had it, right? That's why it's got to be imperfecto, because we had it. And there is no beginning and end to we had a house. Okay, I know. Maybe you sold it and moved, but yeah. But we had a house has to be imperfecto, imperfecto. Okay. Yeah, and I'm going to give you an example. If somebody took tener and put it in that other tense that we call preterito, tuve una casa, it would change the meaning of tener from had a house into got a house. We got a house, meaning we finally nabbed it, we rented it, we bought it, but it became ours. And then it's an event, right? But we just had a house, teníamos. And 90% of the time, you're going to hear tener used that way. Okay, vale. Más ejemplos, more examples? Más ejemplos o no?
I have mine.
Okay, Mary, dinos, tell us.
Hace 10 años trabajaba. I'm saying that right. Trabajaba 60 horas a la semana.
Oh,
Ahora estoy jubilada.
jubilada. Estoy jubilada. Now I am retired. Ooh, and there's a little difference between saying I am retired. Estoy jubilada. I'm a state of retirement. Yeah. Estoy jubilada. And me jubilé. I retired, meaning I resigned, checked off, bye-bye, I'm out of here. Yeah. Me jubilé is an event. I retired. I did that. I handed in that bye-bye, see you like never again. Right? But I am in a state, it's like saying, oh, yeah, soy jubilada. I am retired now. Okay, bien, bien. And that word trabajar is one of the, it's one of the ones that it made every 15-year-old laugh. Trabajaba. It's kind of like hubba hubba. Trabajaba. Trabajaba. I used to work. Trabajaba. Okay. Trabajaba. I used to work. And if what you mean is used to, that is it. Okay. Alguien más? Anybody else got an example using an imperfecto? One thing you used to do 10 years ago. Alguien más? I want to,
I can have one.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Gracias.
Yo jugaba al tenis.
Jugaba.
Yo jugaba.
Jugaba al tenis. And notice that jugaba, we don't need that UE. It's just the U of jugaba. Bien. I used to play tennis. Excelente. Okay. A ver. I want to show you some, okay. Perdón. Algo más. Any other little examples or no? I have now examples for you. And we'll see how we will actually use this in practice. And we're going to do one set of examples together. And one I want to send you off to try to do, in smaller groups. Okay, a ver, momentito. Okay, a ver. Let's take a look. I'm going to make these bigger. Voy a engrandecer. Wow, let's take a look at tener. Ooh, and this will help us to also look at this odd thing too. Okay, we're going to use tener. together. And you're going to see tener in great big letters, right? Tenía, tenías, tenía, teníamos, teníais, tenían. These are the forms that you hear tener used in to talk about the past. You don't hear tener used as often in preterito, that other past tense. This is much more common. The imperfecto is much more common for tener in an average day-to-day conversation. Okay, I had, tenía, tenías, you had, tenía, he or she had, teníamos, we had, tenían. So we're going to put this into practice and we're going to ask a question. We're going to do this set all together so you see how this works. Tenías un mascota. Did you have a pet? Did you have a pet? Notice I'm not asking, did you get a pet? Like, did you just buy one? All right, that would be preterito. No, did you have a pet? I'm not specifying when, just that it happened sometime. It was at some time in the past. Tenías un mascota. Did you have a pet? And the follow-up question to that is going to be, ¿Cómo se llamaba? What was his name or what was her name? Whenever 100%, whenever we say his name was, her name was, it's got to be imperfecto. Because when we're talking about what somebody was named, there is no beginning or no end to them having that name. It's just what everybody called them all the time. And that means a habit all the time. So it's always se llamaba. So, tenías un mascota y cómo se llamaba. If I were to answer that question, I would have to say, tenía una mascota. Yo tenía un perro negro. Mi perro negro se llamaba Skizix. Yo sé, I know. Okay, bien. Who could answer that question? ¿Tenías una mascota? ¿Y cómo se llamaba?
Sí.
Okay. I'm sorry, because I've got share screen on. I can't see you raising your hands. I
okay.
can't see everybody then. So
Go ahead, Mark.
if I seem clueless, I am. Okay.
Sí, tenía un perro, tenía dos perros. El primero se llama
Se
llamaba Muki. Y el otro se llamaba Goldie.
Bien, perfecto. Se llamaba, his name was. Perfecto. Excelente. Otro ejemplo. Tenías una mascota y cómo se llamaba.
Tenía
Tenía
dos
una-
gatos.
Perdón. Ok.
Tenía dos gatos. Se llamaba Azúcar y Especia.
Spice?
¿Sí?
Okay. Bien.
Azúcar.
Now, because you had dos gatos, Diana, it'll change from se llamaba into se llamaban if you talk about them together. Now, Mark talked about them separately.
Sí.
Se llamaba Toby, se llamaba Muki, see?
So, se
he could
llamaban
say,
azúcar y especias.
okay, bien. Sugar and spice, see? Azúcar y especia, see? Okay, so because she used because she connected the two, and she was talking about them in an ellos format, right? Mark was saying his name was and his name was separate. Se llamaba, perfectly fine. But if you're talking about them together in the same sentence, it becomes an ellos idea, right? Se llamaban, you get the end at the end. Se llamaban azúcar y especia. Bien. Excelente. ¿Qué más? Okay, chime in, rest of you.
Tenía una perro se llama Mufasa.
Okay. Excelente. Bien. ¿Quién más? Who else?
Tenía un caballo.
¿Un caballo?
Sí, se llamaba Rojo Grande.
Ok. Rojo Grande. Sí. Me gusta mucho. Bien, me gusta mucho. Sí. Tenía un caballo. I had a horse. Ok. ¿Quién más? Who else? Tenías una mascota. ¿Alguien? Anybody?
Tenía un perro, se llamaba Bailey.
Excelente. ¿Sí? Bien. Okay. And whenever we say somebody's name was, human being, your pet, whomever, it's always se llamaba. It'll never be the other past tense. It has to be se llamaba, se llamaba. Okay, bien. La segunda pregunta. ¿Cómo era? What was this? What was this like? ¿Cómo era el primer carro que tenías? What was the first car you ever had like? Ooh, we word that very differently in English. How was the first car that you had? Okay. How was the first car that you had? So in other words, the first car you ever had, what was it like? ¿Cómo era el primer carro que tenías? Okay. El primer carro que tenía era muy viejo. Era un carro usado. It was a used car. El primer carro que yo tenía era viejo, usado. ¿Bien? Okay. Or you could just say what it was too. Okay, bien. Una idea. An idea there?
El primer carro que tenía era un VW Bug, más pequeña.
Muy pequeño, muy pequeño. Era un carro muy pequeño. Sí. Mi primer carro no era muy pequeño porque era un carro de los años 70. En los años 70, en the 70s, ¿sí? Los carros eran más grandes por lo general. Bien, ok. ¿Quién más? Who else? ¿Cómo era el primer carro que tenías?
El primer carro que tenía era nuevo Toyota y era un verde sedán. No conozco.
Oh, verde. Sedán. Uy, no sé. Tengo que buscar la palabra para sedán, ¿sí? Un carro de pasajeros, no sé. I have to check out sedán. Sí, bien. Ok, excelente. ¿Qué más? Anybody else with contribution for that one?
El primer carro que tenía era un Mustang roja.
Un Mustang rojo. Muy deportivo, really sporty. Wow, era un carro deportivo. It was a sports car. Bien, fantástico. ¿Algo más?
El primer carro que tenía era un Impala oro.
Ok, excelente, sí. Vale, ¿algo más, sí o no?
Mi primero carro era un Pinto rojo.
Un Pinto, sí, muy común. Era muy común. It was very common. Era muy común tener un carro como un Pinto, un Corolla de Toyota, ¿no? Sí. Ok, sí, muy común, como primer carro, first car, sí. Ok, no era muy común tener un Mustang. ¡Woo! Muy deportivo, very sporty. Era un carro muy deportivo. Very sporty car. Ok. ¿Qué comida tenías en tu nevera el fin de semana? What food did you have in your fridge this weekend? And you just had it there. It was just there. Okay. Not what you went out and purchased an event. Not what you put into a bag. That's an event. What you just had. ¿Sí? ¿Qué comida tenías en tu nevera en el fin de semana? Bien, sí. Tenía salmón. Tenía salmon. Tenía salmón en mi nevera el fin de semana. Ok. ¿Alguien más? Somebody else?
Tenía leche y carne y queso en mi nevera el fin de semana.
Bien, bien. Ok, vale. ¿Algo más? Something more?
Tenía las frutas en mi nevera el fin de semana.
Tenía frutas. Okay, fantástico. Here's what I want you to go into a small breakout room, because this is one verb you'll also be very comfortable with. Estar. I want you to now move into using this in a little bit of a smaller group setting. I'll send this into the breakout rooms with you. Estaba, estabas, estaba, estábamos, estaban. Uy, a ver, desapareció. Wow, my N disappeared. I want you to practice these 3 questions with the people in your smaller breakout rooms. We did tener as an example. These will be estar, all in imperfecto. ¿Dónde estaba tu universidad o tu colegio? Where was your university, your college, or your high school? Colegio es high school. ¿Por qué estabas muy ocupado? Why were you very busy? Y por fin, ¿dónde estabas para tus vacaciones? Where were you for vacation time? Where were you for a holiday? Bien, okay. Algo muy breve, something very, very brief. Okay, so I want you to talk about those questions. You will see them when you get into the breakout rooms. Probably have you in groups of 2s or 3s. Vamos a ver. Uy. Where'd my breakout? Here we go. Aquí vamos. Vamos a ver. Uy, a ver. Okay. A ver. And hit your join button, and then you'll see the questions when you get into the room. Se me olvidó de empezar el reloj. I forgot to set my timer here. Okay, vamos a ver. We're going to bring folks back. Bien, okay. We got folks coming on back. Did that make sense? Be able to answer some little questions with that?
Sí.
¿Sí? ¿Alguna pregunta? Any question about those? Any
Yeah.
problems? that-
It's like, I wasn't sure about it. Like, number 3, I think the vacation thing,
Mhm.
about the vacation. So how do you answer that? It's like you can answer in 2 different things. Like,
Estaba en,
if you
por
say,
ejemplo,
mis
por ej-
vacaciones estaban en,
oh,
en las montañas.
Mm,
oh, you could. Okay. Sí. I didn't even think of it from that point of view. Mis vacaciones estaban en, well, no. Okay.
No?
No. Estaba
Okay.
en las montañas para mis vacaciones. I was in the mountains.
Okay.
Estaba en, yeah, not my vacations were in because your vacations weren't. Yeah, no, people will say that as estaba, I was in. Estaba en las montañas. I was in the mountains. Sí, entiendo la pregunta. I understand the question now. Estaba
Okay.
en las montañas. Estaba en la playa. I was
Yeah.
on the beach. Sí, estaba en Nueva York. I was in New York. Estaba en Canadá. I was in Canada. Right? Como así, like that. And you'll name the place. En and the place you were in. Eso es. That's it. Sí, exacto. Okay? Bien.
So if I say like this, so if you say that estaba en las montañas por mis vacaciones, porque me gusta, or what should I say? Me gusta las montañas que las playas. Can you say that like in a long sentences? Me gusta.
Porque me gustan las montañas.
Oh, so me
más-
gustan, not me gusta. Okay.
Me gustan
Las
montañas. Sí,
montañas.
porque
Okay.
me gustan las montañas más que la playa. More than the beach.
Okay.
¿Así?
Sí.
Bien.
Gracias.
Okay.
Now
De
I have
nada.
now I have a question, because
Okay.
in the examples you gave, like I was in New York for vacation.
Mhm.
Is that sort of general enough that it isn't to be construed as a specific event, that you could still use
Oh, Yeah. Right.
okay.
And as a matter of fact, I can even say, except I didn't want to get as specific as this, like when you talk about location of a place, like, okay, por ejemplo, en mi pueblo, in my town, en mi pueblo, la biblioteca, the library, la biblioteca está en el centro del pueblo. Okay. Or la biblioteca estaba, it was in. If it's present, está en, right? But if it's past, la biblioteca estaba en el centro del pueblo. Bien. O, por ejemplo, el parque estaba cerca de mi casa. The park was near my house. El parque estaba cerca de mi casa. Bien, sí. But, sí, yo estaba en Nueva York. Sí, I was in New York. Bien. Okay. Vale. Okay. I am going to give you some extra questions using these verbs to practice and come back with some ideas of practicing. So I'm going to give you some more questions with tener in imperfecto, some more questions with estar in imperfecto, some more questions and some new ones with ser. So I will ask you to prep some new questions for ser and haber, and I'll tag some new ones on with tener and estar. And you will see those in the homework email so that you come to class prepared to practice with those. And they'll all be imperfecto and they'll all be very consistent, but they'll be those special verbs, the special verbs of ser and haber, tener, and estar. Okay, bien?
Bien.
Okay, I'll put the
Sí.
ones that we did already at the top. I'll put the new ones in like a bottom tier. They'll be separated by like a line of asterisk stars so that you know where the dividing line is from old stuff. I'll even tag it. Okay, I want to take some extra time because I cut you guys off last week. Wow, last week, I don't know what. I do know why I so messed up last week on ending too early. It was because I had too many changed appointments that day. Oh, and it drove me nuts. Okay. What I want to show you today is actually a snippet, not a whole video, but a partial video. I'll send you the link for it so you can watch the whole thing. It's entirely in Spanish, so some of you might find it a little bit challenging to listen to, but at the end of the video, what he's got, which is helpful, this is a not grammar thing. It's a vocabulary thing to build in and to show you why we're using imperfecto. This snippet is going to show you some time marker words that you will frequently hear people use that will be marking it as, oh, because of the time period I'm talking about, when this happened, I'm going to need to use imperfecto. So in other words, time marker words that that indicate we need to use imperfecto, that can help you as a clue, that can help you both to use it in speaking and to use it when you listen for it. Okay. And this is way at the end. Wow. It's the last like 2 minutes of the video. Okay. But I'll give you the link for the whole video because it's a whole lesson on imperfecto. But I want you to hear the time words and to talk about those. And this will make up a little bit for some of the time I missed. I'm going to tag out an extra 15 minutes this week and next to make up for the time you didn't see. Okay, can you see this this very cute young man with his con las gafas, with his glasses? See?
Sí.
See? Okay, bien. So now this isn't really ir, he's just showing you the forms of ir, but now he's going to start talking about time marker words that indicate we need to use imperfecto.
Se conjuga de la siguiente manera. Número 1, siempre.
Here is a word that indicates, if I'm talking about the past, I will need, with the past, if I use the word siempre, which means always, I will need imperfecto. Because the nature of that word, siempre, always, means a bunch of times. And I don't know how many, just always. So it indicates a habit, a repeated event. So here's the example. If you hear siempre used to talk about events, things in the past, actions in the past, it'll have to be imperfecto.
Mi familia y yo siempre íbamos a la playa en verano cuando era niño.
My family and I always used to go to the beach when I was a kid. Siempre, always, will indicate, hey, if I'm talking about the past with the word siempre, I'm going to need imperfecto. Here's another one.
Número 2, todos los o todas las.
Like todos los días, every day, or todas las semanas, every week. Literally all the days, all the weeks. Todos los días, todas las semanas. Again, this indicates repetition. So this kind of time marker of todos los or todas las with a, time, or todos los lunes every Monday, todos los viernes every Friday. They will indicate you've got to use imperfecto because it means a repeated event.
Todos los viernes iba a clases de baile con una amiga.
Every Friday, I went, meaning I used to go. I used to. I went, but with the idea of I used to, because it was every Friday. I used to go to dance classes with a friend. And because it's todos los viernes, it's got to be iba. It can't be fui, I went. Preterito, it can't be the preterite. It's got to be a repeated event, which means imperfecto.
Número 3.
Cuando era, when I was, when we were, when you were, when I was young, when I was 15, when I was 3, when I was a baby, when I was talking about my past, cuando era. We're going to be using imperfecto.
Cuando era joven, cuando era un niño, cuando era un bebé, siempre cuando hablemos de cuando éramos más jóvenes, cuando
We talk about when we were younger. When we talk about when we were little, it's got to be imperfecto.
éramos más pequeños. Por ejemplo, cuando era pequeño, comía muchísimos dulces.
When I was a little kid, I ate a lot of candy. What I used to do when I was a little kid, used to do is imperfecto.
Número 4. Cada vez que.
Cada vez que, every time that. In other words, well, that's literally what it means. Every time that, cada vez que, every time that. But we would probably in English say whenever. Whenever I did this, again, it's going to indicate something that was a habit. Whenever I was in this place, I did this. Imperfecto, you'll see.
Cada vez que.
And I'm going to stop in the middle because they zoom these sentences off quickly. Cada vez que tenía un problema, every time I had a problem, llamaba a mi mejor amigo. I called my friend. So we're talking about 2 repeated events. Every time I had a problem, because I had a problem many, many times. I don't know how many times, just a lot. Every time, whenever I had a problem, I used to call, again, imperfecto, llamaba a mi mejor amigo, called my best friend.
Tenía un problema, llamaba a mi mejor amigo. Y número 5.
Mientras. Mientras means while. While indicates something going on. And often there'll be 2 events happening simultaneously when you use mientras. Or it might be a mix of while I was doing this. No, usually it's 2 simultaneous events. We'll see the example he's got. 2 things going on at the same time. Mientras, while.
Mientras comíamos pizza, veíamos un documental de animales marinos.
Bien. Mientras comíamos pizza, while we ate pizza, while we were eating pizza, while we were eating pizza. We used to watch, veíamos. We used to watch, we were watching, we would watch. But these both indicate 2 events, and they happened at the same time, simultaneously, together. Mientras, while, and mientras is a signal word when we use it in the past to tag it on to an imperfecto idea type verb. Mientras comíamos pizza, veíamos un documental. Okay.
That seems like a single event.
Well, it is, but it's 2 things going on at the same time because the eating happens now simultaneously while we're looking at something on the TV screen.
Okay. It
Yes,
just is.
they happened the same day. You're right. They happened at the same time. Oh, look, this is why this word mientras is so important. Mientras means while. And I'm saying the nature, you probably never thought about this, but it's the same in English. While indicates two things are happening, but they're separate activities, but they're happening at the same time.
Okay.
Right? They're happening together, sort of, right? Same kind of time.
De nuevo, tener estas palabras en mente nos ayudará a reconocer cuándo tenemos que usar el imperfecto.
So these little words are going to be timestamps or markers that kind of help you to figure out if I'm using these time markers in the past, I will need imperfecto. Literally, it will not make sense with those kind of time markers to put on the other past tense. Well, now that's kind of irrelevant because you don't know the other past tense yet, but these kind of words will signal a time element that indicates must use imperfecto.
Así lo identificamos más fácilmente. Bien, espero haya...
Okay, and that is the only part. I will let you watch the front end of that if you want to. He talks a little bit more about it. He reviews the conjugations. He reviews the conjugations basically. Bien. I'm going to tag on some more questions. The other thing I'm going to give you is another short story to listen to about a trip, a field trip. It's about a school field trip. In the school field trip, unlike what we did today, we were really isolating our use into focusing on the aba forms and the ia forms. Yeah. All right. So we were isolating our practice. In the listening video I'm going to give you, it's going to start to combine both preterite and imperfecto. Now, you may say, rightly so, I don't know those imperfecto, or I'm sorry, I don't know those preterito forms. I don't know the preterite, the second past tense. I don't know them. Okay, I'm going to make a little list for you. Here are the words to watch for in this video. It is impossible, really and truly, to tell any story in the past without mixing the two past tenses. So I will give you the preterite, the ones you don't know yet, so that you'll know, oh, it means this. Okay. That way you'll know when she's mixing in the tense you haven't seen yet. I'll give you a vocabulary to help you decode what that part means. Yeah. All right. I'll give you an example. Somebody may say, and I believe she's going to use words to this effect in this video. When I was 15, I took a trip. When I was 15 is describing the age. Whenever I describe age, it's got to be imperfecto in the past. When I was 15, it has to be imperfecto part. But then to say, I took a trip, that's an event. And the I took a trip part is where I'm going to have to give you the decoding, the definition of that new unknown other past tense. You follow what I'm saying? So I'm going to give you a scaffolding, a way to say, oh, when I hear a verb I don't know, I'll look at this list and it'll tell me what to listen for. Make sense? Okay, because you don't know how to mix that in yet. Bien, vale. But you will notice some of these verbs, and she's going to talk very slowly. So that'll help too. Okay, todo está bien. All good?
Sí.
Try.
Es
complicada.
It is complicated. It is complicated. So, and this is why I said at the beginning of class, and I'm not joking. People take kids that saw
difícil.
me 5 days a week, 5 days a week, 10 months out of the year. They spent a whole year learning this. And they finished
Oh.
the year saying, I kind of get it, but boy, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And the second year, people would say, you know, it's a little uncomfortable, but not as bad as I remember it last year. It's a little better. And the year after that, they say, you know what? Why did I think this was so hard? When it takes you 2 or 3 years to get comfortable, this tells you, yeah, how hard and
Yes.
how normal and how normal it is for this to feel uncomfortable. But we have to dip our toes in. So, yeah, that's why I'm going to give you a whole set of vocabulary words that will help you over the parts that you don't know yet. Okay?
Okay, me duele la cabeza.
Me duele la
Ahora.
cabeza. Lo siento mucho, Janita. Ay, lo siento mucho. I am so sorry. Pero eres muy normal. You are very normal. So please know. Yeah. It is, you know, and it's very interesting. I had a student once who she lived in Paris, and she would come to the States for holidays during the cold time, you know, cold winter Paris.
Mhm.
Would come to Arizona to visit, and she took some Spanish classes. Preterito and Perfect, she was like, because French does that. She already knew. Oh,
Yeah.
of course you use this. Oh, of course you. And she was just learning different conjugations. But see, her language already had that
That's
structure.
right. Yeah, it's easier.
It's easier. So she was like, why are these people having so much trouble? I don't understand why they think this is so hard. But because she grew up with that.
How
So-
about that, Marianne? Didn't you live in Paris?
No.
No, who was it that lives in Paris?
Not me.
Somebody.
No, it's what is her name? Oh my God,
Hillary?
I'm blanking out.
Oh, shoot. I was thinking it was you, Marianne.
No, that was because her husband is French,
wish.
right? Her
Yeah.
husband is French.
Well,
Hillary.
you know, so, you
It's
know,
Hillary.
it was interesting that this French person, like who totally understood how to do these two past tenses, but then she would study ser and estar and say, oh, this is awful. French doesn't do this. This is awful. I don't know why they make this so hard. Why is this so hard? Why do they do this? We don't do this in French. No, you don't. But see, she didn't have that structure. And when she did have it, it was like easy peasy, easy peasy. Well,
Yes.
but not for us.
No.
So that's a normal feeling. So yeah, so we dip our toe in. Yeah, we dip our toe in. And the story I'm going to send you is a 6.5 minute story. Yeah, when you take out the intro, 20 minutes at the beginning, it's a 6.5 minute story. Okay, bien?
Sí. Oh my
Excellent.
gosh,
Okay.
it's hard.
It is hard, but do know.
'Cause I translated from my language to English and then
Oh my
English to
God.
Spanish, right?
Oh, yeah. Try to fight that. Try to fight that feeling of. Try to fight that. I know that is hard, but do try to fight the feeling of translating.
Yes.
Because yeah, that really makes it difficult. Okay, yeah. Although I have been guilty of that too, because sometimes when I do little French lessons, I start to translate from Spanish into French, and I then I say I have to stop doing that because I know it does not help me to do that. Okay.
So how many languages do you speak?
Bueno, español, bien, pero francés solamente un poquito. Un poquito. Okay, enough to get by in a pinch. In a pinch, and not a lot of tenses. You know, some basic present and past. Yeah, very, very basic. And teeny tiny bits of German, but more. That is a little, I would say, more vocabulary oriented. Like I recognize words, but the grammar I am much spottier on. Because the grammar for me is much, much harder.
Yes.
Yes. No soy
Yeah.
experta.
Yes.
Reconozco unas palabras aquí y allá en alemán. Un poquito, muy poco. Okay. All right. ¿Está bien? We good there?
Sí.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Gracias.
Okay, we'll stop right